Now with Jahana Hayes, the Democratic Congresswoman from the 5th District. Welcome. Thank you for being with us here on CT22. This race has been targeted. It's a national race. People have been writing about it in national publications. Why do you think the 5th District of Connecticut has so much attention?
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me. And I think it's obvious. Republicans in the House of Representatives are trying to do anything they can to get the majority so that they can roll back the agenda and much of the work that's been done to lower the cost of prescription drugs, works on climate initiatives, the gun bills that we just passed. So it's a high stakes race for them. So they're putting in the money to try to flip this seat.
I know you've talked about it in past interviews, but one thing that makes this maybe a challenging district to either be the Congresswoman for or to run for is there's a lot of variety in the voters that you're talking to. I mean, you have people in inner cities and people on farms in very rural communities. How has that been as you've been serving that community, and what does it make an election like?
So, to your point, I have 41 towns. I have some of the largest cities in the state of Connecticut and some rural, very small colonial communities. And what I've tried to do my entire time in Congress is just to speak to the issues, because at the end of the day, people care about the same things. They want to be safe. They want to, have good paying jobs. They want their children to have a high quality education. Healthcare has always been an issue. And it doesn't matter if I am in Waterbury, Meriden, and New Britain, or in, Cornwall, Salisbury. I'm talking about the same thing. My message does not change, and I think people like that. They like the consistency. They like to know that their voices, their perspectives are valued in the work that I'm doing.
What do you tell voters who hear that message? And I think it goes in, not just in your race, in a lot of races, Jahana Hayes and Nancy Pelosi, Jahana Hayes and Kamala Harris. And they try to link a national figure. When voters say to you, Congresswoman Hayes, what do you make of that? What do you tell them?
Well, I say, let's talk about what I voted for. To try to link a national agenda, when I tell people that H.R. 1319, which all these attack ads are about, is actually the American Rescue Plan Act that every community is using to recover. Look at my record, is what I tell people. But it's also a little disappointing because my challenger always touts, I voted with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. First of all, Nancy Pelosi doesn't vote on every vote. So I've probably voted with Kevin McCarthy more than I voted with Nancy Pelosi. But in 2020, every single vote that he took was a party line vote in the Connecticut State Senate, and no one has asked him about that. In 2019, 97% of his votes were straight party line Republican votes. So this idea that he would do something different, if you were not going to vote for the American Rescue Plan, what would you have voted for? What would you have told the mayors, the first selectmen, the first responders, the hospitals, the school districts, in all of these towns when they were hurting in the middle of a pandemic? What would your solution have been?
One of the things that is also used both in some of the national PAC advertisements we've all been seeing on television and just some of the discussions about the race is that you supported some defund the police effort. What do you say to that?
It's absolutely false. Again, look at my record. I have brought millions of dollars back to local police departments. In Wilkett, in Watertown, we have money coming in New Fairfield, in Waterbury Pell, New Britain Police Department. I have supported COPS grants. We just passed legislation to departments that are less than 125 members could have the support to recruit, retain. That is so completely egregious, especially since my husband, 25 years of his life on the Waterbury Police Force as both a patrolman and a detective in major crimes. I know what police funding, why it's important, why it's needed. I have supported school resource officers consistently. My challenger voted against hazard pay and raises for Connecticut State Police. So when you look again at the record and look past the rhetoric and the top lines, people will see that I have consistently not only supported funding for police, but voted for it. And the idea that has to be mutually exclusive from also calling for accountability, people want that too. My husband, when he was on the force, he didn't want, good cops don't want bad cops next to them. And if we can't hold our own accountable and ask tough questions and follow up, in the Congress, Republicans voted against support for Capitol Police. They voted against, for crying out loud, medals for Capitol Police. So this argument that no one will ever see me on record, in an interview, saying anything about defunding the police. And it's interesting how everyone focuses on the 7 Democratic members who have said that, but nothing is being said about the Republicans who are calling for defunding the FBI, the Department of Justice. That's law enforcement as well. So again, I tell my voters, look at how I vote. Look at what I've done. You know, trying to lump in a national message is what you do when you have no issues.
When you are in Washington, you're one of 435, which is a teeny tiny percentage. But what can you say to the voters in the 5th District to say, look what I got done for you over these last few years? What have you, as that 435th, done?
Oh my goodness, outside of, you know, all of the major Democratic bills that we've got passed, things like the American Rescue Plan, the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, the PACT Act, you know, the inflation, all these big Democrat bills, I also had 8 pieces of my own legislation passed. You know, I had the Access to Baby Formula Act with over 100 Republicans who supported it. I had 4 different pieces of veterans legislation under 2 different presidents. I had to go in and talk to Republicans and get support and try to get co-sponsorships on the issues that they care about. Last week, we just voted on a Mental Health Matters Act, my legislation to support trauma-informed education practices to make sure that as schools reopen and we're recovering, that we're not laying off social workers and counselors and behavior therapists. You don't get that done without being able to go in any room and talk to people and get bipartisan support. So even though I'm one of 435, I have had the ability to reach across the aisle, to talk to different people, and actually to have legislation passed. My challenger was in the Senate the exact same amount of time I've been in Congress. Never had a bill voted on, marked up, gone through committee. So this idea that he's delivered results is just not proven. I've delivered results not only in large Democrat packages that we voted on, but in individual, standalone, and bills that are part of larger packages.
We have about 30 seconds left. This race, I mean, it's a moving target, but Politico still calls it a toss-up. What do you make of that, and what's your final pitch to voters with 30 seconds left?
Well, I don't follow the polls because there's other pollsters and groups that say that there's a much wider gap. But I say to voters, you know, look at my record, look at what I've done. There's a reason why Kevin McCarthy and national Republicans are throwing millions of dollars into this race, and it's not to elect an independent-minded person who won't fall in line with them in Congress. They just did another ad buy today, so I am not going to return the favor in kind and go negative. I think my record speaks for itself, and the people of this district know that, and they have an opportunity to elevate their voices and speak about it on November 8th.
Congresswoman Jahana Hayes, thank you for being with us here on CT22.
Thank you.